Cheaters of Reddit, why are you currently cheating on your significant other? Story 1. I am a frequent cheater on my wife with escorts. I am adventurous. My wife isn't. I rationalize it as getting from them what my wife can't or isn't willing to do. I rationalize that I'm not loving any of these women, I'm just using them for a service. I realize I'm a terrible person. Downvote me if you want. I'm just answering the question honestly. We now have a Discord. Check out the server in the link in the description. Story 2. You wanted a serious and honest response, so this is how I can do it. I've been a cheater in most relationships I've ever had, and as a result, a self-hater for most relationships as well. I've been through therapy for about 8 years for other reasons, and what I've come to learn is that I didn't feel I deserved love, affection, or appreciation. This stems from a whole host of other things from my childhood: intimate abuse, lack of fatherly relationship, latchkey kid, etc. I treated relationships as though they were temporary, even though they lasted years. I'm a good-looking guy, so lots of women offer up temptation that I found difficult to reject. And each time I hated myself for my indiscretions. I also picked relationships that were bad for me: cheater girlfriends, terrible communicators, insecure women, etc. Then I met the girl of my dreams. I was so into her from day one that I immediately shut down all of my other options. I told other women I was dating that I was happy and done dating around. I shut down a non-committed long-distance relationship as well. I was really in love. Then I found out she was cheating on me. I can't describe the heartbreak and betrayal I felt. This sent me through a downward spiral of emotional hell. Through therapy, I was able to get back on track, appreciate myself more, and find a girl who is absolutely perfect for me. I do still have urges to cheat sometimes, but my unwillingness to hurt her saves me. Part of my self-hatred stems from not doing the right thing. Each time I do the right thing, I feel a sense of pride, and it makes me feel worthy of the love I receive. A positive cycle. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this question asks for current cheaters. This guy sounds reformed to me. And while it's not the dirt that we were all looking for, I still think it's a pretty wholesome story, and I'm proud of the person for finding his own self-worth. Story 3. Here was my experience with my last girlfriend. You know how somehow every girl is interested in you when you already have a girlfriend? Well, it starts like that. At first, you're not going to cheat, but you want to see if you've still got it. Now you know you've still got it, and you just want to dance with her a little bit. All of a sudden, you're dancing and making out, but you're not sleeping with her yet, so it's not cheating, right? Then, one night, you're really drunk and had a fight with your girlfriend, and you end up doing the same thing, and boom, you've slept with this girl and are officially cheating. Now, you keep sleeping with this one girl because, hey, nothing bad happened the first time. This girl is just a physical outlet for me. I still love my girlfriend. Well, time goes on, and you've fallen so far over the line that you can't even remember when you've really crossed it. And this new girl wants more from you, and your girlfriend is wondering why you suddenly have to work late but are making no more money, and you've got to try to find a way to break it off with the new girl. But it's hard because you kind of like her too. Suddenly, you've constructed a web of lies so complicated that you're not even sure that you can unravel it. And you're not sleeping well because if your current girlfriend finds out, the crap will hit the fan. And if your newer girl finds out, your girlfriend will also eventually find out. You get into this situation where it's just easier to put it off. And it's sort of like when you put off breaking up with someone, but to a greater extent, because the disincentives are so copious. Story 4. I was single at the time, but he was married, so if that counts, I'll tell my story. About 10 years ago, I was in college and met Professor X, who was in my fairly small department. There was definite attraction there, but I knew that he was married and had a child. And believe it or not, he wasn't a skis, so we just ignored it, and I'd like to go to his office hours and chat about the material or whatever. And after about 2 years of that, by which point we are definitely into emotional affair territory, including a course taught by him, we were at a senior's graduation party in our department and likely tipsy, and he offered me a ride home. Then asked if we could pull over, and we both confessed our attraction and kissed in what was the most surreal thing imaginable. What followed was a year and a half of sneaky meetings. First in some random hotel rooms, then my apartment once I got one. I did some grad school there as well. And 1 or 2 nights bundled into conferences and the like. We fell in love and were brutally honest with each other about the good and bad of the situation, with some humor too. After we banged, my first statement was, "And you still gave me a C," referring to the class I took from him a year ago. No way in hell we would have done anything while still in such a position. He still loved his wife and child, and I was always second to them. Literally the first thing we agreed on in that car. But, to quote him, it was like getting struck by lightning. and something that he had never done before nor planned to do again. I know Reddit won't believe him, but even though this was some years ago, I know it was the case then at least. And we still email sometimes, and I've no reason to not believe him. Incidentally, I should mention beyond just really, really liking each other to the point where we couldn't ignore it, he was also down to banging only like once every 6 months with his wife, even though they tried various ways to rekindle things. She was just no longer interested as she got older and her chemistry changed. And he was a good guy and loved her deeply. Once again, I was never ever first over her. So he wasn't about to tear his family apart over a dead bedroom. But yeah, even if not the primary factor, it was surely part of it. He also had the gallows humor of telling me when we ended it that the best banging of his life was over. We did some amazing exploration he never did with her, and he never planned to cheat again, so ergo. Anyway, we ended up just ending it because he was just feeling more and more like a sleaze lying to his wife, and eventually we ended it and that was that. I cried so hard and was feeling badly for at least a month or two after that because while I'd always understood it was going to end that way and was willing to do it anyway, it didn't make it hurt any less. And of course, because I never ever told anyone what we were up to, I was in pain inside but couldn't tell a soul why. That was pretty awful. So why do it even though I couldn't ignore it? Honestly, to steal his phrase, it was like being struck by lightning. I will never have a relationship with someone married again, though believe me, there's been an opportunity. But after 2 years of buildup, this was not just something I could ignore and say I didn't want. I couldn't walk away even though I knew it would end in heartache, because I think back on our time together and it makes me smile to remember those moments. And yeah, probably compartmentalized a bit as he was the one cheating in a relationship, not me. I will also say though, if I end up in a stage of life where I find the one I want to marry, I will make it clear. If he feels like he has been struck by lightning by someone else a few decades down the line, especially if I'm no longer interested in banging as much, though may that day be far off, I wouldn't hold it against him if he followed through. Though, if anything, I'd prefer it if he just told me. Maybe that makes me strange, but I feel like I've learned a lot about how relationships can evolve even when everyone involved is a good person who loves each other very much. Now, I know this isn't Am I the Jerk, but I still gotta call OP a bit of a jerk here. Hiding something like that from his wife is just bad. I don't think OP or the guy the guy who had an affair with her, I guess, is less at guilt. I think had it started where it's like she didn't know he was married with kids, then sure, it's a lot less of OP's fault. But it happened while knowing that. And it wasn't like an open relationship deal. He never told his wife. It's a huge betrayal of trust to his wife, and that's just so bad after so many years of marriage. I get things drying up in the bedroom for the guy probably sucked. But work it out? Find a different solution? Cheating and lying to your wife is definitely not it. Also the whole, oh, it was a spontaneous struck in the moment type thing, I don't fully buy it. Or, I guess not spontaneous. I don't know. What did they mean by struck by lightning? Like it was a 1 in a million chance that they would find someone that they'd feel that way about? I don't know. Whatever it is, I think OP is kind of sleazy and so is the guy who had an affair with her. Story 5. Cheating is one of the greatest adrenaline rushes one could ever have. I cheated often and I wasn't too bad at it. It all comes down to ego. You even begin to enjoy the lies. There are people that screw up and cheat. One time I was stupid and feel terrible, then it stops. That happens. But then you have people that have a thing for it. The great equalizer in a cheater's life is dating someone better at it than you. I dated my best friend. It was one of those occurrences you read in fairy tales where you see the girl for the first time and you know you're in love. 14 years old, first day of high school. We clicked immediately. It took us 9 years of friendship before we finally hooked up, and when we finally did, we were both in relationships. It was great. We cheated for a while, then decided to break it off with the other SOs and become an item. I decided to part with my ways as a cheater. I had a chick on the side for a while before and during her, but I finally broke it off with that one as well. We dated for about 6 months. We both found our soulmates. I spent 3 years training day in and day out to fulfill a dream of 10 years. It would have required me to move, so I stayed behind and quit to be with her. After 6 years, she started showing the signs. Short texts, breaking off plans, etc. I knew what it meant. She was back on the cheat drug. I couldn't take it. I was a Batman of a detective. I found everything. We broke it off and I was crazy for about a year. Looking back, I don't blame her. It was a rush. It was what we knew. We started in infidelity, so of course it was bound to end up that way. She is by far the greatest person I know, but like any addiction, it is almost impossible to ever shake. I now have a girlfriend whom I will not cheat on. The urge is always there, but you learn to see it as what it is. It's a selfish form of validation. As for the ex, we've been through too much to ever fix that for many more reasons than you can care cared to read. She is still one of my best friends and we stay in touch. There's a quote somewhere about soulmates not being the person you marry. They break you down and make you realize what you truly are. Through all of the lies and the self-destructive behavior, you realize you're actually doing a drug. Habitual cheating is exactly like drug use. It benefits no one but you and your selfish needs. Then when you get off of it, you're always one step away from relapse. My girlfriend now is the bee's knees, and I've been nothing but honest about my past. She has always had trust issues in past relationships, but with me, she doesn't. I don't know how that happens. That faith has made it so easy for me to stay true. It also helps that I'm not 22 anymore. Age and ego go hand in hand. Huge props to this OP for recognizing cheating as a selfish form of validation. That level of personal growth is rare, especially with people who have egos in the first place. I also find it weirdly hard to believe, though, that anyone who says their new girlfriend is the bee's knees was a habitual cheater in the past. I don't know. Just something about saying the bee's knees just reads as faithful to me, but goes to show how much I know. Story 6. My wife and I are best friends. We latched onto each other in our early 20s and know we will always be life companions. It's such a great fit, so much understanding, mutual humor, and just pleasure in each other's company. We love making a home together, having friends, sharing our days and meals. We've been together for 30 years and raised a couple of happy, well-balanced kids. Ideal, right? Well, yes and no. It's been an everything but banging arrangement pretty much from the start. Not by plan. That part never came together somehow. The bedroom hasn't always been dead. I mean, we did manage 2 pregnancies after all, but almost always. Months have sometimes gone between couplings, and there isn't even all that much frustration. At least these days. More on this below. But not much interest, not much specific chemistry. It would be great if we had memories of a brief, frisky, frantic phase like many couples have, but nope. We were both virgins at the time of our marriage. I did experience a crisis about banging a few years into the marriage, feeling like I had missed something essential in my life. She felt sorry but powerless to help. And then I met a childhood friend who I hadn't seen for many years. I learned that she'd always had a crush on me and decided to act on it. It wasn't a moment of weakness, but a deliberate decision that I informed my wife of in advance. Didn't ask, just said that I needed to do this, went away for a weekend with this other woman, then went home, wondering, have I destroyed everything? Instead, she welcomed me in happy tears and wanted to know if I felt better. And I did. Not only that, but we had a period after that where the bedroom was positively alive. Didn't last a long time, but damn, it was nice. Since then, we've pretty much put it together that the only thing that sparks her frisky interest is the perception of competition. She can't be intimately attracted to me except when she believes that someone else is too. While I haven't made a pattern of explicitly seeking out actual adultery, emotional cheating turns out to be beneficial to the marriage, provided she knows about it, or at least is encouraged to suspect it, which I guess makes it not cheating at all, although most people would probably see it that way. She wants to know who I'm in flirtations with at the workplace. She occasionally asks who I would like to go to bed with among my friends and hers. She wants to know if I've had any close calls or near seductions at work conferences and such. All of this peps up our intimate life to some extent. No, we haven't turned into a pair of legendary lovers this way, but it kinda gets us both by. And I'm getting old enough now that my drive is starting to wane, and things are more equitable between us that way than they used to be. Now, before you say I need help or she does because of her presumed self-esteem issues or whatever, I'll assert this. In the big picture, she is one of the most secure people I know, and we've come to consider ourselves one of the happier couples among our acquaintances. I don't think there's anything to fix here, but it's not like we can talk freely about our relationship with anybody, and like probably almost everybody else here, I'm posting with a throwaway. Now, I'm super glad this worked out for them, but note to the audience, do not go and try this at home. If you do want to try this, I would personally encourage you to ask your partner as opposed to just tell them and do it. As far as I'm concerned, this guy got super lucky. If it works for you and your partner, that's great. I mean, there are some people in completely open relationships, which I personally could never do, but sure, it works for them. But please communicate with your partner about this better than this guy did. For every one story like this guy's, I guarantee you there are 20 which did not end so well. Story 7. Kissed a boy while on a break with my boyfriend at the time. Apparently, we had different ideas about what that meant, which is the main objection I have to breaks. It's like breaking a toy so that other kids can't play with it. Personally, I don't qualify this moment as cheating, but since my boyfriend at the time did, I guess it counts. I was on holiday with my boyfriend at the time, who I will call Chris, since that's his name. On the second day of the holiday, Chris came in blind drunk at 1 a.m. He woke me up, dumped me, screamed at me for 2 hours so loudly that he woke up the people sleeping next door, and tried to take advantage of me intimately while I was still crying. He also threatened to kick me out of the apartment, meaning that I would potentially have ended up homeless for 2 weeks with only a rudimentary knowledge of the language. Like an idiot, I took him back after he decided that he still loved me when he felt jealous that another boy started hitting on me. So we're back together and go out with this friend who introduces us to another guy. Let's call him Steve. Steve begins hitting on me, which I politely ignore. Steve continues and I become increasingly uncomfortable. I ask Chris to come and sit with me, hoping that Steve would realize I had a boyfriend and leave me alone. Chris, however, refused and just sat there smiling at Steve while I tried to keep Steve's advances at bay. Measurements might be relevant here, so I'm about 5'5" and a little chubby but very weak. Chris was about 5'8" and lanky as a streak of pea. Steve was about 6'2", built like a brick house, and probably could have crushed me if it got that far. Chris goes outside for a cigarette and I follow on the pretense of getting fresh air. Really, I want to know why the hell he isn't helping me fight this guy off when I've specifically made it clear I don't want to be hit on. By this point, I've already pushed Steve away twice. At which point, Chris says, "We're on a break, so leave me alone." It felt like such a slap in the face. Hadn't he just told me that morning he still cared about me? What had I done wrong? I walked back in feeling numb, and Steve tried to kiss me again when I sat down. So I let him. I just thought, sod it. What's the point? I went out, had a lovely time, and got back to the apartment at 3 a.m. feeling euphoric. Until I got in the apartment and discovered that Chris had seen me walk off with Steve and the other guy, both people he'd been out drinking with basically every night, and lost his crap. So that's my story. Some people would count that as cheating. I don't. The reason I did it was because over the course of the holiday and on a grander scale of the relationship, the more I look back on that relationship, the more questionable stuff I remember. I was made to feel like crap. Most people don't cheat for the giggles. Personally, I don't count this as cheating at all. Boyfriend clearly said that they were on a break. Also is abusive and a piece of garbage, but admittedly that doesn't really factor into whether or not something is cheating. And while I don't think it's cheating, I still think that Steve is a bit of a scumbag. I would like to say that. Story 8. I've never cheated, but I can tell you about the time I really wanted to but didn't. I was dating a girl I knew I would never marry. She was wonderful, intelligent, attractive, and extremely kind/supportive to me. I should have loved her. On paper. She was everything I ever wanted, but for reasons I still can't explain, I just didn't love her. One night, I'm at a bar with friends. GF is not with us because she lived 200 miles away from me at the time, and one of the friends who I am very attracted to is flirting with me all night. Finally, she offers me to go back to her place. I had been worked up into a massive hormonal furor that I had little control of myself. I kept thinking about the ensuing guilt. I just didn't want to be that guy. Not so much for me, but for my girlfriend. She had been so good to me that I saw cheating on her as just a downright evil act. I get it if your significant other doesn't treat you well, but in that moment, I couldn't come up with a single thing about our relationship that would justify me betraying her like that. So at 3 a.m., I walked home alone, breaking the cardinal rule of living in a big city. On my way home, I became the victim of someone's gang initiation attack. I wound up with a shattered nose, concussion, broken facial bones, and lost 25% of my vision. But that was still easier to live with than knowing I cheated on a woman who did absolutely nothing to deserve it. We did break up, but I can honestly say no human being has ever treated me better. And I'm saying this after 10 years of marriage.